Welcome to the Lonely Marketers podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by Amanda Ansell, the head of marketing at Carrington West. We talked about why it's important for marketing to work closely with HR as well as sales, about training your people how to talk and write about your services, which leads us into brand building using your teams on the phone as a touch point, not something many recruitment marketers probably think about. We also talk about owning job boards and why it benefits her company for marketing to own it. Here we go. Okay, on that note, we're actually starting, so a bit of laughter to enter into the episode, which is always quite nice. So Amanda, thanks for joining me to record this podcast. And what's really interesting, as we've just been talking about, is it doesn't feel all that long ago since you were on this very podcast recording with Glenn. It's actually quite a few years ago.
Yeah, it was the end of 2021, I believe. So I'm still in the throes of pandemic.
Yeah, and you're now over 4 years, I think, into the role at Carrington West.
That's right, yes.
And like some of the other guests I've interviewed in this series, what's really nice is, again, you're not what I'd class as a career recruitment marketer. You've got outside experience, which I always see as extremely valuable. People like myself who've only done recruitment marketing, we don't have that barometer as such, so it's always interesting. Before we get into comparing our sector to the sectors you've perhaps worked in, I just wondered if you could give us a general update on Carrington West from your last episode. So from 2021, what's happened? Because you were a lonely marketer back then, but I don't believe that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. So I joined the company in early 2020, literally just before the pandemic, 3 months before. And I was the first full-time marketing resource that the company had. So my remit very much was to come in and introduce a marketing culture to the company, to focus on getting the basics right, to really set up some sort of cohesive brand identity.
Yeah.
Which it was, to be fair, in recruitment, it's relatively easy because there's always so much to do, and marketing is one of those resources that tends to come in a little bit into the journey. And I was very fortunate that the team was very marketing savvy and they knew they needed it and they were prepared to invest in it. But they actually just hadn't had the resources to do it. And they'd done a great job. They have a really nice website that kind of was positioned in the right way. But everything was just a little bit outdated and creaking at the sides because the company was growing so quickly. So I think I was employee number 47. We're now over 100.
Wow.
And we're still growing with very ambitious growth plans. So very much it was, let's spend the first year or two laying the groundwork and then consolidating everything. And now we're a team of 3. I have a digital marketing assistant and I have a marketing apprentice who does general marketing as well. So yeah, a lot has changed.
That's quite nice kind of growth ratio as well. You've gone from 1 in 50 to 3 in just over 100. Yeah. I think there'll be some envious listeners who are probably sat on their own with over 100 colleagues. So yeah, introducing additional pairs of hands has obviously allowed you to divide and conquer somewhat. Are you focused on specialisms or verticals? How does the team kind of structure itself?
So the team structure, that's an interesting question. And I like to work with the resources I have, and I like to allow the people in my team to be able to work on what they want to work on, but also where their skills are best suited. So the first thing I did was plug the skills gap that I didn't have. And that is tech. I'm not a technical person. I was a little bit behind the curve when it came to anything to do with Google AdWords, Google Analytics. I can use anything that's plug and play, and I know exactly what I want to get out of the tech, but I didn't necessarily have the motivation or the skills to spend a lot of time knee deep in understanding it all. So the digital marketing, she came on as an apprentice originally. That was absolutely key for me, and that remains her core focus because that is what she wants to do and that is where her passion is. And there is nothing that she likes better than a spreadsheet, some data, and some back-end bit of integration or something. So from that point of view, that's how I started. And then when we had the opportunity to grow again, it was more a case of, okay, what else do I need? I need someone actually who can support me. We're doing a lot more events, a lot more in terms of content production. Just I needed a general admin support as well.
Yeah, of course.
So,
I mean, yeah, it's a job that I think all functions create admin, don't they? But marketing seems to create a lot of it, and also sometimes get asked to do it by other departments as well. You don't want to do that
100%.
bit, but
I was really
happens,
lucky.
right?
Yeah, and I was really lucky because I ended up finding someone who had graphic design experience and passion as well. So actually, that was the one thing that I was still outsourcing. I was able to bring that in house when she started as well. So we've definitely got content, graphic design, event planning in one person, digital in the other, and then I'm much more generalist as my background.
It sounds like a good mix, and I think it's always key that bring that complementary skill set rather than the overlapping skill set. Because it's pressurized. If you're having to dip into the stuff that you never did earlier into your career, it's like I think you described it as you don't have the interest as much as the skill. You want to be doing other things. In terms of how that kind of progression, you've progressed the team and the business has grown. Come back to that. Your career history, really, you've had plenty of time in recruitment marketing now to kind of judge the differences. Can you tell me what you see as the big differences, the nuance that recruitment marketers have to experience that perhaps they don't elsewhere?
I think you've just got to be very clear on how you marry your target audience, how you portray your brand to your different target audiences, your candidates, your clients, and then your own employees, past, future, and present. Equally, the brand needs to mean the same thing to them in an underlying fashion, but the kind of channels that you're using to reach them are very, very different. But there is a lot of overlap as well. That getting your head around the kind of candidate client comms and what you push out to where. And I think perhaps the biggest example I would use is in the contingent recruitment model. A lot of companies will think that their website would be written for a client, and they want to be consultative and they want to be shown that client, how good they are because the client pays the bill, right? But at the end of the day, you've got to be brave enough to say no. Jobs. It's got to look like a job board. If you've got jobs, put the jobs on there. If the candidates come, then actually that's your traffic, that's your engagement, that's your audience. Your clients, how often do they Google X, Y recruitment in? You're going to get 3 hits a month. I mean, clients don't do that. Your salespeople are doing that for you. So it's that kind of understanding which channel you use to talk to which part of your audience and how the overlaps work. In other sectors in the past, I don't think I've ever had to focus quite so much on our internal audience or on our employee engagement, and I do a lot of that now. That is a third of my time, literally. Those 3 markets are how I split my time equally between them.
That's interesting because there's lots of conversation. I've had loads of conversations from a consultancy capacity and when I've been in-house. Where do you want me to focus the time? What's most important right now? It was very rare that the colleague piece took up a third. So there's quite a big focus on that, which I think is a good thing. You've got a good understanding of what the value proposition is and how to take that to market, and you work alongside these people. So it is really interesting that you're so heavily involved in that.
Yeah. So the marketing team and the HR team sit together. We sit on the sales floor.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Marketing and sales obviously are intrinsically linked and are part of the same process, but HR using our skills for employee engagement activity are key, and how we use marketing skills to just improve engagement generally day to day, but also to attract and retain people as well. It's really, really important.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. You joined, was it before COVID or
just during? Before, yeah.
So just before COVID. How's that shift changed for you as a business? Obviously, we went remote, we went back. Where are you now? Are you hybrid or is everyone back in the office?
Yeah,
how's it panned out?
That's an interesting one.
Question.
Yeah, I don't want to sound old-fashioned in my views on this. So I'll talk specifically in our experience. So we had just introduced flexible working before the pandemic. So it was a flexible start and end time and a flexible lunch break.
Yeah.
So it allowed people to do the school run and come to work, for example, or go to the gym at lunchtime and work a couple of hours later in the evening. And that was great. That gave people a lot of additional flexibility. We had a number of roles, actually mine included, that were part-time. So it was anything from 2 days to 4.5 days a week, just so people could kind of move their hours around. And that worked really well. I think we all surprised ourselves by how we could all go and set up a whole company literally overnight from bedrooms and front rooms around the country. And when we came back, we went to part remote, but only 1 or 2 days. We did find that something was lost in the at-desk training. And because we're a scale-up and because we are hiring and training ourselves, we hire very few people at a senior level as consultants. We hire mostly at the bottom. We hire for potential, and you just miss those opportunities. And let's face it, making X number of calls a day from someone's bedroom, if you're a 25-year-old living in your parents' house in Portsmouth, is hard and it's demoralising.
Yes.
You need that energy around you.
I think for that situation and scenario, it makes a lot of sense to have that experience alongside you, and it's not just the experience of your team management; it's the other functions, like you say, HR, sit with sales, sit with marketing. You pick up a lot more when you're sat in and amongst different functions.
You do, but we can't overlook the fact that people want choice and they want to be able to go to the dentist in their lunch break, which may be not near their workplace. So they don't want to have to take a day off for that or something, for example. So we have to offer that and listen to it. So some people will work 1 or 2 days a week from home. Some people won't do any. And largely, we're probably 75 to 85% of people are in the office at any one time.
But by the sounds of things, that's working well because the company's growing and success is there.
You have to have the provisions in place. We're very lucky to be in a really good, well-located offices, free parking, lots of on-site facilities. We're not asking, and our employees live relatively locally. We're not asking people to, if you're commuting into London, I can understand it's going to save you a few £100 a month to do 1 day or 2 days.
Scenario,
it's a different scenario, yeah.
So with that in mind, you sound like everything in terms of internal structure and stuff, you've worked collaboratively with other functions. I imagine, like anyone who's successful in a marketing job, that breeds more work. Even though you're 3 people, it's not a massive team, right? With everything you've got to take care of. How do you go about prioritizing the work of the functions, and have you got any specific workflows, processes that help you keep on top of all them varying projects? So
because I did start off on my own as a lonely marketer, I set up a lot of processes and toolboxes up front because I knew I want everyone to do certain things, but I knew I couldn't actually do it myself. So here's a centralized system for your resources that you can go to any time. And I had a lot of processes that had to be set up. And I think as soon as people start to see the value of marketing, they buy into it pretty quickly. We have one team that use you all the time and they suddenly become the best performing team. Everybody else wants a piece of the pie. So it was relatively easy in that respect because I think people buy into it and see the results. And I stand up in our awards, which we have every month, or in our half-yearly updates, and I can actually show the data of the ROI and what we've delivered, and that makes a huge difference.
So that's something I'm a big proponent of, is the ROI, and I feel in many cases, and I get the impression yours isn't one of them, so this is why I'm raising the topic with you, to get some experienced insight into making it work. What happens a lot in this industry is, rightly so, the leadership wants to see ROI on all of marketing, and any new marketing we're going to do, can we estimate the ROI? I firmly believe there's a big disconnect in the same leadership then struggling to get the head around how they need to make the business work for marketing to see that information. So they've got systems and processes in place that predate marketing, and then they expect it just to fit in almost, and the marketer to be able to fully report on ROI from everything they're doing. It sounds like you've got ROI measurements and reporting well in hand. Can you talk us through how that came to be and what you had to do to make that work?
So I think I was very clear when I first started, and I guess this is the advantage of someone with a bit more experience coming in, as opposed to had they hired someone more junior who then kind of grow with the business. I was able to say straight away, these are the things that are going to take years. I mean, you want to build a brand in this market. Building a brand doesn't happen overnight. We have to have a presence at XYZ. We have to hit these people with these kind of communications. And then we can say, yeah, they've heard of us. They know who we are. And that could be in some markets 2-3 years. So I was very clear that it's not immediate. And I was very, I think, upfront about what I could deliver as one person, 2 people, 3 people. And once they understand that, I feel like it was a pretty straightforward process. But you've got to understand the business as well. I had to get my head around how people work, and I have to choose when I have to fit in with their processes versus how they fit in with mine.
Trying to redo everything all at once is not often the way to win friends in a recruitment business that are used to doing things how they do.
And if you've got a company that live and die by your CRM, for example, then don't start adding layers of amazing tech that takes them out of that, because it's creating work. Even if there is an end reward, find the best way to fit in, to integrate.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Is your CRM something that you tap into a lot as a marketer to get your reporting, or do you look at data outside of CRM for that aspect of the role?
Both. I think you just have to take the data from wherever you can get it.
Yeah, and that's something that's important to keep on top of what's working, right?
Absolutely.
So with stuff like that, one of the questions I've been asking a lot recently when I'm chatting to marketers is the things that often fall on the desks of a marketer that some of us may or may not consider marketing, quote unquote. And the big 2 that I'm pressing on are CV databases and LinkedIn licenses. So not necessarily job ads, but CV databases where essentially to me, we're paying for access, or the business is paying for access for sales guys and girls to jump in and get CVs. LinkedIn licenses, similar scenario in my mind. I can go in and find people. Are you, what side of the fence are you on? Is that marketing? Is it not marketing? And how does your company handle it?
So because I do manage the budgets for job board advertising, we do manage CV databases and LinkedIn licenses.
You're taking more work on.
I know. I'm really sorry.
No, don't.
If you're on your own,
perspectives. I want all
if
perspectives.
you're sitting on your own, for me, I took it on because I want to manage the budget and I want to track ROI. And recruiters are a little bit like kids in a candy shop when it comes to tools and resources. If you lay it all out, they'll just take it all without thinking, because why not? Of course you would.
Of course.
So if access to a CV database or using a LinkedIn license works, have it. Great. If it doesn't, take the money and use it somewhere else, for goodness sake. But it's making sure you use everything properly as well. And I guess that's where also my role is 30% working on internal engagement and in employee happiness, along with my HR team, is also to make sure that they have the training to use all the tools properly. So if I'm responsible for the budget for job board advertising or CV databasing, I'm happily involved in organising the training to make sure that they're using it. And I manage those relationships also with the external suppliers, because I mean, that's how I get I negotiate the terms, I get the best bang for our buck. And I know which questions to ask them to get the data out of them to make sure we're using it properly.
I think it's a refreshing outlook on it, because I think a lot of people in a marketing role, at senior marketing level, get stuck in limbo where they're being asked to do bits of it, but don't get control over it. And I think the big difference, what you're saying to me there, is you've got a vested interest in getting the best for the business. It doesn't really matter that we wouldn't bucket it as out and out marketing, some of it. The fact that you can build and nurture the relationships, it's more aligned to sales and marketing being aligned, right? You're seeing the 2 things bridged. I think some of us, when we've had them relationships, it's almost like, oh, you're nothing to do with the budget, but can you deal with CV database logins? And I think that's why it gets a bad reputation.
Yeah, and I mean, when something, to give you an example, when something gets too much, too admin heavy, then I wouldn't do it. I would outsource where I can. So, for example, we invest in Indeed, and it's a pretty pricey job board, but it also takes a lot of management. I don't know how familiar you are in the back end of it, but the campaigns need constantly reviewing. So I've now outsourced that, and then I just have a weekly meeting with a third party who just goes through and says, this is what's working, this is what isn't working. These jobs aren't performing very well, and I'll have a look at those jobs, and 9 times out of 10 it's because they're written very badly. So then that kind of falls within my remit to then go and say, okay, can we try a different job title? Can we try, could you try posting it here? And again, that's all marketing spend that we want to maximise. And it's our brand. A lot of candidates only ever deal with us when they see our logo on a job ad. So if that's day one of their interaction with us, I want that experience to be as good as it is. I want that ad to be in the right place. I want it to look smart, well formatted, give them all the information they need about that role. And that's down to me. So
I feel it's massively overlooked and continues to be, the value of well-written job adverts for that not just for that purpose, but the baseline purpose of getting the right people to apply for the job. I've always struggled to overcome why there's not enough priority placed on a job ad from a desk level right through a business level.
And we do training on it, and you have to stay up to date with that training. So again, that's where I come in with my relationship with the job boards, because they know what's working. If CV Library come to me and say you've got to mention the job title 7 times to get to the top of the search list on our job board, then I'm going to be going back to my consultants and say, okay, here's a well-formatted job. Now put the title in 7 times, and it's all part of the process, because I will be coming at some point and saying, well, the ROI on that job board, on that spend is this, and
And do you find advice like that still happens as much? That I appreciate that's just one example, and I've experienced that, where length of the job title, how many times you mentioned the keywords. I feel we're almost past the era of optimizing in that kind of way, but are you saying that still happens from the likes of CV Library?
We do get that kind of advice within, so when people are searching within job boards, and it will be different. I think AI is probably changing it a little bit. So again, that's more to get our heads around as marketers. I have run a few ChatGPT training sessions as well. But that's a whole other story. I think each board has its own unique way of working, and at the end of the day, I could just give you an example. Total Jobs, for example, want you to use a postcode, and and then others want you to use a town or a region, and I just, that if I've got the time to just sit down and work out what works best on each job board, then I can pass that on, rather than an account manager at a job board having to relay that 70 times to 70 different consultants. I'm the conduit for it, and we get it so that our job ads hopefully perform the best they can. We've got to work with the tech that they happen to have, rather than the other way around.
Of course, and trying to approach it with one size to fit every job board can't necessarily work. So if you've got all that insight, you find a middle ground as such, where for the type of roles you're advertising, you can't do everything for every job board, so you find something that works in most places, or slant it towards the job board that's best for the kind of roles.
And the more we talk about it, the more I'm sitting here thinking, gosh, why am I doing that? But actually, what I have to keep reminding myself is that we're coming back to the fact that I'm doing it because that's such an important candidate outreach tool that has a real impact on the candidate relationship with us going forward. And that's why it's important.
I would argue that anything else, especially candidate marketing, but I still think it's relevant for clients. Anything else we're doing to drive brand awareness, whether it's on social media, whether it's through email campaigns, whatever we're doing to get our name out there and increase reach, ultimately it's all going to come back to a job ad. Why? If a client sees poor quality job ads, are they going to then entrust you and your consultants with advertising their jobs? It's a sticking point for me that a lot of we've gone off so many different marketing avenues that we just ignore the basics.
You have to absolutely be brilliant at the basics before you can go and do the more complex projects.
Yeah. Would you class yourself as copywriter by trade, copywriter background, or is it one of the things that you get external help on?
No, copywriter background. So I started in general marketing, but in publishing. And yeah, I had periods of time where I was working part-time with bringing up my family, and I was then doing freelance copywriting. Always erred a little bit more towards the technical copywriting, which kind of fits quite nicely with the engineering recruitment that I'm now doing. So
because that can be a challenge. I think if you're a marketer without that slant or that background, perhaps that's some of the reason people don't take it as seriously or don't put the effort in, because it's not an easy job. Generalist marketers aren't necessarily copywriters or content writers. So hearing that from you, it makes a lot of sense how you're aligning that strategy.
Yeah, and I don't want to kind of sound like I focus too much on it, but at the end of the day, any communication you put out there, the clearer and more concise it is, the better it's going to perform, whether you're optimizing it for SEO or whether you're just trying to get your message across. It's a basic rule, isn't it?
Yeah. So moving on from that and thinking more in terms of everything that's going on with marketing right now, we're all involved in so many different things. We jump from pillar to post, or we get pushed and pulled from pillar to post. What tactic do you see recruitment marketers or recruitment companies doing at the minute that you just get a little bit irritated by, or you look at and have a wry smile because you just think it's a waste of time and people should put their resources elsewhere?
That's an interesting one. I think one of the reasons the Lonely Marketers works as a title is actually you have to do everything to some sort of degree. You have to have quite a solid foundation. If you just did one thing in recruitment marketing, you're not going to make any inroads into anything. So you do have to be a little bit of a jack of all trades. At different markets, different things will work, different industry sectors, depending on whether you're the specialist recruitment company or a broader recruitment company. I don't see one thing that I really don't like, because sometimes the things you don't like are the things that work. Unfortunately, putting job ads up on LinkedIn does work. And everyone will say, don't do it, it's not good for your brand. But they're the ones that people click through on. So, and we've got the data that says that. So,
so putting job ads on LinkedIn in terms of advertising it.
Just on the feed. Yeah.
I would never say don't do it. My view on it is it can't be the only thing that someone's producing. But it'd be remiss, wouldn't it, to not put job ads on LinkedIn?
100%. That I think I maybe over automating too many things that you don't need to, introducing too many layers of tech.
100%.
Anything. I think people also see through anything that's not authentic. So a lot of reviews, whether it's Glassdoor or Google reviews, just if you get them all bunched together, or you get a lot of people saying the same thing, you can see they've been solicited. I don't think that. I think people see through that these days.
There's been an internal competition to increase Glassdoor reviews, and everyone's sent a copy and paste version round.
Yeah, and I just think authenticity, people do see through with brands, because their interaction with the brand is so much more personal when you're using channels where you're on people's phones. There's no mass media in recruitment marketing. It's all quite targeted. So if it's not right, it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's interesting. It can't be disjointed either, can it? It can't be this nice rosy outlook that's all orchestrated by leadership and a marketing team, and then the reality is very different. People aren't daft. On the flip side of that, is there any marketing tactic that you feel as recruitment marketers or as recruitment companies we're kind of overlooking and you think that's something that people should do a lot more of? I know we've touched on job ads, but is there anything else that you think we're doing that successfully? Why do other people not look at it?
Well, that would be giving the game away, wouldn't it? Trade secrets.
Hey, we're a community that shares.
No, in all fairness, for me, what we do by putting our own people first is the most important thing, because then they advocate for us. They live and breathe our values. They understand completely what the company is about and what our value proposition is. And that means that automatically I've got 70 people out on the phone and saying consistently the same message, and delivering consistently the same high quality service to clients and candidates and any other supplier in the industry that we deal with. And that is key. If you spend the time with the people internally to really get that message there, then it's just easy for everything else to work.
So the touch points, like job adverts, the touch points of sales or recruitment, whatever way best describes our colleagues on the phones, technically, them touch points are critical. But yes. I feel you're quite unique in that outlook, or that the way you see that as part of a marketer's role. And again, I think that's from coming from a different background. I think recruitment marketers tend to get put on the marketing side of the fence, and sales are over there. Therefore, the marketing never, rightly or wrongly, it's nobody's done it by design. But it's just really interesting to hear that you're so embedded in the way people are talking on the phone, the messaging on the phone. I think that's really interesting.
We have a flywheel business model, which is basically says if we have the best people and we give them the best tools and train them, they can't help but deliver the best customer experience, whether that's to candidates or clients. And they can't help, which will bring in business, which will build momentum. And if you continually assess and improve those processes, you will continually improve. And that is the philosophy of the company. And marketing feeds into every part of that flywheel.
Yeah. And I think, again, that kind of doubles down on that aspect, that marketing is around everything or woven into everything, as opposed to a lot of the outlook of companies where marketing sits over there and does marketing. And again, that's interesting because it's not a company that wasn't established before your input. So it speaks volumes about the leadership's appetite for marketing, I think.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think, and that by bringing in someone like me that had a little bit more experience. So I had recruitment experience, albeit from more exec search. And from Asia, not from the UK market, to then bring me in with a longer history outside of recruitment marketing, I think just goes to show the value that was placed on marketing before I came, and the openness of ideas, that everyone here was open to ideas from day one. And it's very much, if they ask a question, they're trusting that I have the marketing answer. There's no second guessing.
Yeah, they don't need a second opinion. You are the marketing expert. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? If you've been in roles where you're hired to do that, but then there's almost a level of, I wouldn't say lack of trust, but people who then want, you've only got a year in the job, so I'm going to get a second opinion. It could be quite demoralising for the younger marketer, but kind of understandable from the leadership team to want to get that outside input as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So thinking forwards now, obviously a ambitious business, growing business. Do you operate internationally at this stage?
No.
Is that something you've got designs to do, or are you very focused on where you're at? Yeah, and you will remain UK focused, but there's a lot of scope for growth.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're very invested in the markets that we are in, and very much of the view that we're experts in recruitment, but we're industry and job function experts as well, and in a very narrow field. So, for example, I mean, town planning, it's just town planners, so it's about 3 different job titles. We've got 10, 12 people working on just town planning. It's fantastic. You can really understand that sector and get to know everyone in it when you focus on such a narrow field.
Again, that's bucking the trend. Every recruitment agency wants to be bigger, wants to be in more countries, wants to be in more sectors, more industries. But you're doing exactly what a marketer would advise: stay niche and be the brand in that niche.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I came in and said, right, let's create a category and own it, just like that would be every marketer's dream. But it's easier to be distinctive and be good and be better and to improve when you identify the opportunity and keep it narrow.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Moving on to the quick fire questions. I didn't listen to what you said last time. These have changed
I can't remember.
ever so slightly. Some are the same, but one's been dropped. There was a question about noises that I struggled to answer when I appeared on Glenn's podcast, so we won't be asking that one. But the first one is technology you couldn't live without, and this can be life, work, whichever you find, because they both interact with each other ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, it would just have to be my phone. I mean, everything's on my phone. Yeah, it's very simple. It's just a phone, but anything that's in it,
you'd be lost without it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not a very exciting answer. I wish I could say I was an early adopter when it came to tech and I had some amazing tech that I used and has revolutioned life. But I'm still, my husband always talks into the remote control to get it to change channels. I just can't do it.
No, it's my kids that trip me up, setting me alarms on Alexa and all sorts of stuff. But I am more analog when it comes to pushing buttons on remotes, I must admit. It might lead us into this next question, might not, might be totally separate, but your favourite brand?
Yeah, really, really hard as a marketer to pick it because you just start picking it. You could just look at every brand and then you start picking it apart because you think about what you would do differently. So I try to think about this as a consumer, and it would probably have to be something that's just very trusted, like Marks and Spencer's, for example. It's always been there. It's trusted. It's got a certain expectation of quality, which it's pretty much always delivered, apart from those of us that are old enough to remember a slight dip in the late 80s, early 90s. But in terms of food, everything is, you get it, you kind of get what you pay for, and it's slightly premium, but not aspirational, not beyond the masses. And it's just friendly. It's just...
Yeah, it's nice, right?
Yeah,
the environment's nice.
Yes.
Like you say, there's a level of... I suppose you don't go there every day, but if you were buying food from there, you know you're going to get high quality than just a high street supermarket.
Yeah, absolutely.
And your least favourite brand? This is a new question because I like to hear who everyone hates.
This is so unusually for a marketer. I'm quite good at just switching off from things. I tend not to have quite adverse reactions to things. So I had to really think about this. And I'm going to say, and I feel a bit mean saying it, but I'm going to say Hyundai.
Okay, that's interesting.
And I don't know why. So I've got teenage boys. So we've been through a lot of car buying over the last few years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say every time I sit in a Hyundai, I physically, it repels me. It's so masculine. And so something about the dashboard I don't like. I find it don't like it.
Share. It's never a car I would, no offence to any listeners who drive one. I drive a Nissan Qashqai, which isn't anything special, but I'm not a car snob. But yeah, I would never look at a Hyundai. I think I've rented one once and took a dislike, and I don't like the logo. That's always a killer.
Yeah, I know. It's just simple, isn't it? It's just a simple thing. There's just nothing about it that makes me warm to it, and I don't know why. Because actually, the small Hyundai is a perfect car apparently for teenagers to learn to drive in. But no, didn't do anything for me.
You won't be buying one.
No.
And finally, Amanda, your favourite swear word. What word do you use when you've just got to get something off your chest and express?
Bit old-fashioned. I think bugger is probably...
Bugger? Not had that one this series, but yeah.
No, it's horrible. It's horrible. Now you've made me say it, it's just horrible.
Do you find yourself using it a lot, though, or is it the rare occasion that a swear word will be required?
No, I unfortunately have a little bit of a potty mouth, so it's probably not the one I use the most, but it just sounds a bit nicer.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well, that brings us to a close. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you and hear about how things have progressed since you were on the episode before. I think it sounds like you've made a huge impact and you're developing a team there that's ultimately core to the business. There's nothing marketing isn't touching there.
Absolutely. That's my aim.
So we're going to get you back on in another couple of years and see how you've progressed further.
Fantastic. I might have to get better lighting.
All right. Looks good. Okay. Thanks again, Amanda.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Lonely Marketers podcast. If you would like to join like-minded recruitment marketers in our WhatsApp group, visit the LinkedIn page and scan the QR code in the banner. This podcast is created by the team at Pager. For more information about how Pager can help build personal brands for your recruiters and scale your content distribution efforts, visit pager.co. Paiger.co. You can find me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect for more content about recruitment marketing.